All right, let's talk about getting your data prepared to be loaded into PhoneBurner. It's pretty simple to do. You need to make sure that the file that you're going to import it is saved as what's called a CSV file. Many of you will probably already have your data in a CSV file format. It's a very common format. Most lead vendors will give you the data in CSV. But if for whatever reason it's not in CSV, make sure that you can load it into a program like Excel, and then you can save it as a CSV file. So what we're going to talk about on this training is making sure that your data is laid out properly and that you've got it saved as a CSV file so you'll be able to import it. So here you're looking at an Excel document. This Excel document is called member retention. In this file I've got a first name. I've got a last name. Actually, it looks like most of them don't have last names because the first and last name are all together. I've got a phone number, city, state, zip code, email address on some of them. There's some notes in there, date they joined, and the total number of seats. This is my member retention list. So these are people who are members, which is why I've got a join date column here. And the total number of seats, that's how large their organization is. So let's take a look at this first name column here. Look at that. You've got first and last name in the same column, which isn't a bad thing. I can still import the data if the first and last name are combined. But when the system is sending emails, if it goes to insert a first name and the first and last name are all in one field, my email is going to say, "Hi, first and last name." That doesn't look very personalized. You know what I mean? And if we look down through here, you'll see that most of them it's first and last name. However, I do see this one, Bradley S. Hammer, that has an S in there. But for the most part, it looks like it's all first and last names. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a feature in Excel to separate this data. I want to separate the first and last name. But because I have this one contact that has an initial in there, that can cause some problems for some of my other data. I did a quick scan, and I think it's the only one, but I'm not 100% sure. So before I actually separate the data, I do want to insert a couple extra blank columns. And the reason why I'm doing that is I don't want any of the other data within this first name column overwriting my phone numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of column A. Then I'm going to go to the data section. I'm going to click on text to columns. I'm going to leave it set to delimited. I'm going to go to the next one, and my delimiter is going to be a space. So every time there's a space, it's going to move the data over a column. And then the next space becomes another column. And so that middle initial, any contact that has a middle name or a middle initial, that's going to be separated out into multiple columns. So now all I have to do is hit finish. You'll see a warning pop up. There's already data here. Do you want to replace it? So that kind of concerns me because I don't want to replace anything, but it may just be referring to these two right here. I can always undo the process, so let's take a look and see what we get. So I'm going to hit OK. And here you can see it did get rid of that last name column header and Cora's last name, which had already been separated out. But going down, you can see there was another one that had a middle initial in there. So at this point, I can either undo, and that puts everything back the way it was, or I can leave it as it was and just not worry about Cora's last name. So let's try this a little bit differently. Instead of having the entire column highlighted, let's go ahead and highlight just the ones that I want to separate. So now let's go back to text to columns, leave it set to delimited, go next, space, finish. Everything moves over. Last name is where I want it to be. And now I can just come in here if I want, if I care, I can come in here and I can delete this one and I can move the last name over. Delete the middle initial. Move the last name over. Now this is a pretty small data set, so that's pretty easy to do. If you have a larger amount of data, that may not be that simple for you to clean up. And you may want to use some other tools to clean that up or just not even worry about it. But now that I've got these two extra columns here, I'm going to delete them because I don't need that extra space anymore. That tightens everything up. Now at this point, I feel like my file is ready. Let's go ahead and make sure it's saved as a CSV file. So I'm going to click on the File option in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to choose Save As. A couple things to point out when you are saving your file. One, make sure that you pay attention to the location. Make sure you understand where you're saving the file, all right? You're going to need to be able to locate that file when you go to import it into PhoneBurner. So here you can see I've got it called Member Retention. It's in my PhoneBurner Imports folder. And right now it's an Excel workbook. So I want to change that. I want to save it as a CSV, delimited file. So I select that and then save. And there we go. Now my file's ready to be imported. And now we've prepared our file to be imported into PhoneBurner. Let's go ahead and move on to our next training.